Good evening. Tonight we bring you a story that is shaking the very foundation of North American unity. A story that began with hope, cooperation, and shared dreams, but now teeters on the edge of crisis. For more than 100 years, the United States and Canada have been more than just neighbors. They've been partners, allies, and friends, bound together by the world's longest undefended border, a deep economic interdependence, and a tradition of standing shoulder to shoulder in times of need. From the bustling trade corridors to the quiet moments of diplomatic negotiation, this partnership has been a model for international cooperation. Together, these two nations have faced the storms of history, fighting side by side in wars, supporting each other through economic downturns, and always finding a way to emerge stronger. Their alliance has been tested, but never truly broken. Until now, that is. Tonight, August 1st, 2025 marks a turning point. In a move that has stunned markets and governments alike, Canada has abruptly halted all copper exports to the United States. The news has sent shockwaves through boardrooms, factories, and communities on both sides of the border. This is not just another trade dispute, it's a rupture worth $4.2 billion, a sudden freeze in a vital artery of commerce triggered by the United States' imposition of new tariffs on Canadian copper. The economic impact is immediate and severe, with supply chains grinding to a halt and financial markets reacting with alarm. The friendship that once seemed unbreakable now hangs by a thread. Years of rising protectionism, political posturing, and nationalist rhetoric have eroded the trust that took generations to build. What was once a seamless partnership is now marred by suspicion and division. At the heart of this crisis is copper, an unassuming metal yet the lifeblood of modern industry. From electronics to construction, from renewable energy to transportation, copper is everywhere. Its sudden absence threatens to paralyze entire sectors of the economy. The consequences are already rippling outward. Factories are idling, workers are facing layoffs, and small businesses in industrial towns are bracing for the worst. The livelihoods of thousands hang in the balance, and the very foundation of North American prosperity is under threat. The question now is not just whether this relationship can be repaired, but what will be left when the dust finally settles. Will old wounds heal, or will new divisions define the future? Tonight we'll take you inside the decisions, the drama, and the diplomacy. We'll uncover how a single policy decision, one stroke of a pen, can unravel a century-old alliance and reshape the destiny of two nations. The story of copper is no longer just about metal and money, it's about trust, identity, and the fragile bonds that hold nations together. It's the story of a friendship now teetering on the brink. So, how did we get here? Let's trace the journey from unity to crisis and discover what the future might hold for this once unbreakable alliance. The crisis began with a single, sweeping policy. The White House imposed a new tariff on all imported copper, citing national security. The goal? Protect American industry, boost jobs, and reduce reliance on foreign copper. Instead, chaos erupted. Copper prices soared, supply chains buckled, and manufacturers panicked. For Canada, America's largest copper supplier, the tariff felt like a betrayal. The Canadian government condemned the move, calling it protectionist and unjust. American industries, long dependent on Canadian copper, suddenly faced soaring costs and impossible choices. The tariff, meant as a shield, became a sword, cutting deep into the very industries it aimed to protect. Uncertainty replaced stability, and the stage was set for a dramatic Canadian response. The firestorm had begun. Canada's answer was swift and uncompromising, a total halt on copper exports to the US. In a move that stunned both domestic and international observers, the Canadian government made it clear that this was not a time for half measures or drawn-out debates. The decision was announced with a sense of urgency, reflecting the gravity of the situation and the mounting pressure from within Canada's own borders. No tariffs, no negotiations, just a hard stop. Overnight, shipments were frozen at the border, and copper that once flowed freely between the two nations was suddenly locked down. The abruptness of the action sent shockwaves through supply chains on both sides of the border, leaving businesses scrambling for answers. Years of frustration with American protectionism boiled over. This time, Canada refused to play along. The move was not just about copper, it was about years of feeling sidelined and taken for granted by its largest trading partner. Canadian leaders, tired of endless cycles of negotiation and compromise, decided it was time to draw a line in the sand. The message was clear: if the US won't respect free trade, Canada won't supply its most critical resource. Copper, essential for everything from electronics to infrastructure, became the symbol of a much larger struggle for economic sovereignty and mutual respect. This was a calculated gamble. Canada bet that the pain for the US would outweigh its own losses. Behind closed doors, advisors weighed the risks, knowing that the stakes were high for both economies. But the hope was that American industries, suddenly deprived of a vital input, would become powerful advocates for change in Washington. The goal: force American industries to pressure Washington for change. As factories slowed and costs rose, the expectation was that business leaders and workers alike would demand a resolution, shifting the political calculus in the U.S. Capitol. Geopolitically, Canada signaled it's no junior partner. It's ready to pivot to new markets in Asia and Europe. The world took notice as Canada began forging new alliances, diversifying its trade relationships, and reducing its dependence on a single, sometimes unreliable neighbor. The government moved quickly to reroute copper exports and support affected industries at home. Emergency meetings were held with business leaders, and financial aid packages were rolled out to cushion the blow for workers and companies caught in the crossfire. Canadians were told this was a fight for fairness and respect, a necessary stand against an unpredictable neighbor. Across the country, citizens rallied behind the government's bold stance, seeing it as a moment to assert national dignity and demand equitable treatment on the world stage. The stakes: economic independence, national pride, and a redefined relationship. This was about more than just trade. It was about shaping the future of Canada's place in North America and the global economy. For the first time in decades, Canada was willing to endure pain to make its point. Workers and businesses braced for uncertainty, but there was a sense of resolve, a belief that short-term sacrifice could lead to long-term gains in a more balanced partnership. The world watched as North America's closest partnership fractured. International media covered the unfolding drama, analysts debated the potential fallout, and other nations weighed the implications for their own trade relationships. The copper tap was off, and the consequences were immediate. U.S. manufacturers faced shortages, prices spiked, and the ripple effects began to spread. The message from Canada was unmistakable: respect is not optional, and the cost of ignoring it can be steep. The impact hit American industry fast and hard. Automakers already racing to build electric vehicles suddenly faced copper shortages and soaring costs. Utility companies, desperate to modernize the grid, saw critical projects stall. The green energy transition, dependent on copper, was thrown into jeopardy. For families, the pain was real. Higher prices for homes, appliances, and electronics. Contractors passed rising costs to homebuyers, straining an already tough housing market. Manufacturing towns faced layoffs, not from foreign competition, but from a lack of raw materials. The policy meant to protect American jobs now threatened to destroy them. The ripple effects reached every corner of the economy. As the US and Canada clashed over trade policies and tariffs, a rift began to widen between the two long-standing allies. While heated debates and public disagreements dominated headlines in North America, a very different story was unfolding across the Pacific. Sensing opportunity, China, South Korea, and Japan moved swiftly. Their business leaders and diplomats raced to secure Canada's newly available copper, locking in lucrative, long-term deals that would reshape the global supply chain for years to come. These agreements weren't just about raw materials, they were about forging new alliances and deepening economic ties. For China, this was more than just a business transaction. It was a strategic coup, diversifying its supply sources, reducing dependence on traditional Western partners, and drawing Canada closer into its economic orbit. The move sent a clear message: China was ready to fill any void left by Western discord. Every ton of copper shipped eastward represented a win for Beijing and a corresponding loss for Washington. The US watched as its influence over a key resource slipped away, replaced by growing Asian leverage. South Korea and Japan, home to some of the world's largest electronics and automotive companies, gained a crucial edge over their American competitors. With steady copper supplies secured, their industries could innovate and expand while US factories faced uncertainty and shortages. New supply chains formed almost overnight, complex networks connecting Canadian mines to Asian ports and factories. These routes, once established, would not be easily undone even if political winds shifted. Even if the US were to reverse its tariffs and attempt to mend fences, there's no guarantee Canadian copper would return. The market had adapted, and new loyalties had been forged. The trust that once underpinned North American trade was broken, and the global market had already moved on, seeking stability and reliability elsewhere. Ironically, America's attempt to punish its competitors only ended up empowering them, giving Asian economies a significant boost in both resources and influence. The world was watching these developments closely, and learning valuable lessons about the risks of economic conflict and the speed at which global alliances can shift. The cost of this quarrel would echo for years, reshaping industries, alliances, and the very balance of global power. Copper may be just the beginning. Canada holds more cards: oil, potash, aluminum, each vital to the US economy. A disruption in oil would send gas prices soaring and spark political chaos. Potash, essential for American farms, could be restricted, driving up food prices nationwide. Aluminum, critical for manufacturing and defense, could become scarce, threatening national security. Each move would trigger U.S. retaliation, spiraling into a tit-for-tat conflict. The seamless flow of goods across the border would vanish, replaced by uncertainty and hostility. Businesses would halt investments, supply chains would reroute, and both nations would suffer. The cost of escalation, a poorer, less secure North America, the stakes had never been higher. America now faces a stark choice. Was the tariff strategic protectionism or a self-inflicted wound? Supporters claim short-term pain will bring long-term gain, spurring domestic copper production and jobs. Critics argue it's economic isolation, not independence, severing ties with a trusted partner and crippling key industries. The chaos in autos, energy, and construction is proof. The policy threatens more jobs than it saves. America can double down on tariffs, risking shortages and ceding ground to global rivals. Or it can re-engage with allies, rebuild trust, and restore stability. The path forward demands compromise and a return to shared prosperity. The decision will define America's future. The world is watching. Tonight, the US-Canada relationship stands at a crossroads. The copper crisis is more than lost trade. It's a test of national identity and values. America can escalate, risking permanent division, or seek reconciliation and repair. The choice is between isolation and cooperation, confrontation and partnership. The final chapter isn't written yet. It depends on decisions made in the coming days. Will this be a brief lesson or a lasting scar? In protecting America, are we harming ourselves? The answer will shape our nation's soul.